Good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Law with EADOC, and this is our presentation on using EADOC to reduce costs in education projects. I'm going to go ahead and mute the audience for the presentation. The presentation will take about 20-25 minutes here for you guys this morning, and at the end we'll open it up to Q&A for you guys. Also during the presentation, feel free to go ahead and ask questions in the chat log there on the bottom left side of your screen.
The conference has been muted.
Now this presentation, we're going to focus on using EADOC on the education arena and education projects for you guys. So the first thing we want to take a look at are what are some of the challenges that the education projects have that are different than some of the other capital projects. And the two particular areas that we're going to focus on are the document management side and the financial management side of these education projects. One of the things we've learned from our education clients over the years is typically most education facilities, managers, capital project managers are relying on their architects and contractors for managing the RFIs, documentation, and submittal processes because typically they don't have the resources in-house. This is either due to budgeting or because they're doing bond programs. You know, a lot of the K-12 schools will take on a bond program, may last 5 to 10 years type of thing, and then they won't do another program for 10 to 20 years. And so they're not going to build out a lot of resources. So they're going to tend to rely on consultants, architects, or contractors. The issue with doing this is it leaves the owner very vulnerable. If the contractor gets into a claim situation and the contractor maintained all the records, obviously you're going to have to go to court to get those records from the contractor, which is going to cause a lot of issues in terms of defending. So we're going to talk about the benefits of using the EADOC application, the software tool here to track all the documentation and communication for you guys. Also, architects have been relied upon. Architects' focus really isn't on project controls. You know, they're not experts at RFIs and submittals administration. Their focus is on design of the structures, what's the structure going to look like, and delivering drawings to you guys. So typically relying on your design consultants for that types of document management is not a good practice either. The other big issue for you guys is operations. Typically when operations receives O&M manuals and submittals and test reports from a project, they're usually incomplete because record keeping hasn't been done again by district staff or by consultants working for the district. This leaves you guys exposed to a lot of expenses later on down the road when the operations folks can't run the reports or can't bring up the documentation on the air handler or the generator, whatever piece of equipment may fail. So we're going to talk about solving those issues for you guys as well. And then the second component is on the financial side. You know, typically when you guys are managing projects or bond programs, you're going to have multiple funding sources. You know, there's going to be the bond funds, there's going to be states, federals, grants. Even when you're not on a bond program, when you're doing higher education, typically there's multiple sources of money. A lot of times you'll receive grants or you'll receive endowments that will pay for X percentage of a project, and then you'll use your own school funds or some state funds to pay for the rest. So you need to track those expenses against those multiple funding sources. Budget coding. A lot of public schools, the budget codes are dictated by regulatory agencies. So for example, in California, they have to follow the JCAF standards. There's been a couple different versions of JCAF, so it depends on when you start your projects and programs and the funding sources in terms of which JCAF you have to follow. And most state institutions, most regulated education facilities have to follow some type of standard when it comes to budgeting, so that you can report those information back up to those state or regulatory authorities, especially when you're receiving funding from those particular sources. And so we're going to talk about some of the challenges there with traditional accounting systems and how a program project management application like EADOC can help you out there. And typically those accounting systems, when you look at Banners and Oracles and SAPs, are not set up to manage capital projects or programs. You know, they're set up for a 12-month fiscal period. They're set up to buy books. They're set up to pay teachers, run payroll, and at the end of that 12-month period, they close their books. Well, we all know with capital projects, these last a lot longer than 12 months. You know, when you start the planning, the design, and the construction, say for a large new facility, it could take anywhere from 2 to 5 years. If you're embarking on a large bond program, that could be a 5 to 10-year program for you guys. So you need an accounting tool that can track those financials across the entire life cycle of that project or program for you guys. And so when you look at the project management aspects, there's a lot of benefits there for you to having two systems. You're still going to have your traditional accounting tool that you're going to cut checks out of that the accounting department uses, but you also want a financial tool that you guys can do your reporting on against those projects and programs. The other typical challenge there too is that most accounting systems can't handle contractor payment applications. They don't know what a schedule of values is. Some of them have some mediocre change order capabilities, but they don't have the robust functionality that you guys need as an education project manager or program manager to handle payment applications and change orders in the contract management side of your contracts. Also, some of these accounting systems aren't used to multiple funding sources. If you look at the origination of these accounting tools, they were designed as you have revenue, you use that revenue to pay your expenses, typically private companies type of accounting. They're not really set up for multiple pots of money. I've got state grants and loans and funds I need to use on these projects. And then the other challenge too for you guys is reporting to regulatory agencies. Especially when you're getting money, whether it's from the federal government, the state government, even private endowments are typically have reporting requirements. And so you guys may have multiple funding sources on those projects with multiple reporting requirements based on where that money is coming from. Now, traditionally, most education facilities that we've talked with are using spreadsheets. Some of them have come up with some very elaborate spreadsheets, but one of the things you'll find with spreadsheets, for example, this is actually a screenshot from a spreadsheet that a consultant has turned into an application, is that they leave you very exposed to user error. Users can edit their numbers, they can modify it. A good example here is in my highlight. You'll see I've kind of highlighted this one right here, is that it says red numbers and numbers that are supposed to be automatically generated by the form, but instead have been manually overridden. This leads to huge accountability issues. When users can go in and modify documents and make changes, it leads to error-prone issues. And especially on cost side, those costs coming in, invoices reviewed and approved should not be getting messed around with by users. It should be the actual approved invoice rolls up into your reports. Well, when you're using Excel spreadsheets, there's going to be a lot of user intervention. The other great one I liked is the second line here. These purple numbers are numbers that are supposed to add up to the cost in the total cost column, but are purple because the numbers in the state funded and district funded columns do not add up to the total cost. So this education institution clearly has some challenges with their accounting in terms of how they're rolling up their expenses and how they're tracking their expenses into their Excel spreadsheet. And this is actually a web-based Excel spreadsheet that they're using that one of their consultants provided with them. Now, in a real project management application, you're not going to have these issues because all the changes have to be done at the invoice level. And we'll be going through that here in the EADOC application for you. But this is a huge risk to an owner or an agency to have these Excel spreadsheets being used for financial controls. So the solution. So why would we recommend EADOC's collaborative project management application? First, on the document management side, the software is going to track and control all your project information, providing unparalleled accuracy. We're going to track users who read information, send information, respond to information. All that's going to be done automatically for you. You don't have to hire administrators. You don't have to hire consultants and engineers and contractors. You as the owner are going to have detailed records maintained at the software level. And when we jump into the application here, I'll go through those audit logs and I'll show you how that's going to help you guys out in reducing claims and helping you guys defend against claims. The EADOC application is a very powerful tool in your toolbox to prevent and defend against contractor claims, especially the bogus ones that you may have to pay out on if you don't have the proper tools and documentation to defend them. And then the second thing is the financial controls. All your project level information rolls up the program and portfolio reports. There is no tinkering with numbers. It's the actual data coming out of the projects, it's the approved change orders, it's the approved payment applications, it's the invoices. As they get reviewed and approved against their budgets, all those reports get updated automatically by the software. There's no place where users can go in and tinker with the numbers and lead to cost columns not showing accurate values. It's also real-time financial reports. You're not waiting on special consultants to generate Excel spreadsheets for you guys. As soon as that invoice shows up, as soon as it goes through the review process, it's going to show up as a spent or committed expenditure for you guys. And then the project and funding reports across the life of the projects and programs. These programs are multi-years, they're multi-funding sources, maybe multiple projects in a program. You want to see how you're doing. You want that big picture overview resulting from all those small invoices and payouts that have been reviewed and approved. And so these are some of the benefits of having a comprehensive project management tool to manage the projects and programs here for you guys. Some of the additional benefits here for you guys is reducing project management costs across the team. The key benefit of EADOC is it's collaborative. Those invoices are going to be submitted by the contractors. The documents like Submittals and RFIs are coming from the contractors. Your designers are putting in their drawings, they're putting in the design clarification memos. All that information is coming in from the project team, so you as the owner are doing what an owner should be doing. You're reviewing and approving project information. You're not rekeying in data, you're not updating Excel spreadsheets to give yourselves those reports and dashboards. EADOC is a pure web-based application, so it's full of features and functionality from a tablet, a laptop, a PC. As long as your device is connected to the internet, you can keep tabs on your job no matter where you are in the world. It's got true collaborative workflow. You know, the entire team is involved. You're going to hire a lot of different participants depending on the types of projects you're building. And so these are going to be designers and environmental consultants and testing firms and contractors and inspectors. You want to bring them all into the system. Give them all their necessary rights, the data they need access to execute their projects so they can contribute to that information repository as well. By combining document control and cost control into one solution, I'll show you some very powerful reporting tools for you guys. So I can look up, how a change order got started. Maybe it was an RFI or a drawing issue. Maybe it was an inspector that caught it. All that's going to be tracked here in the EADOC application for you guys. And then it's collaborative portfolio program project management. So take those projects, we're going to roll them up in the programs, and then the programs up in the portfolios for you guys. Or you may just be managing one project. The great thing about the system is it's very flexible, and we can configure the tool to meet your particular requirements. So with that, we're going to jump out of the PowerPoint here and into the EADOC application itself. There we go. So this is the EADOC tool here for you guys. So what I'm using here is my new library project. And my new library project is part of my East River campus. And my East River campus is part of my educational capital improvement portfolio. So for this particular presentation, I've got 3 levels of roll-up. I'm going to take my projects into my programs into my portfolio there for you guys. Depending on your requirements and your needs, you can have just a single project in our system, or you can have a complete portfolio of programs and projects. Again, we can configure the tool based on the size and the types of projects and programs that you're managing. Now within the EADOC application, everything's managed here at the project level. So all the documents, all the costs are all managed at the project level. All the access is managed here at the project level. And then it's rolled up into your programs and portfolios for reporting purposes. Now within each project, we're going to bring on our entire project team. So I'm going to bring up a report here that shows me on this particular project, here are all my project participants. So right now I'm logged in here as Eric the PM here with the school district. I brought on my designers, I brought on my contractors, I've got some commissioning agents, some consultants, I've got my operations group involved. Everybody that I'm working with on this particular project I've brought on board. Now what's unique about EADOC is I'm not just adding my prime consultants and contractors, but I'm also allowing them to bring on their subs. I don't want these guys having to do duplicate data entry. I want my designers to be able to control and review information coming from their sub-consultants. I want my contractors to be able to control and review information coming from their subs. This way, for example, when we take a look at the traditional submittal process, when this concrete contractor creates a shop drawing, they're going to submit it. The general contractor is going to receive it in EADOC. They're going to review it. If it looks good, they can send it off to myself here. I can choose to be an intermediary and route it to my designers, or I can set up a rule where the contractor sends it to me and my designer at the same time. So there's flexibility in the workflow rules for you guys based on how involved you want to be as a district or as a consultant on the project. And then my designers can route it out to their subs. So what you'll find here is each project participant has full control over the flow of information. My designer can send information off to the sub-consultants, and then the sub-consultants can respond back with some comments to the designer, and then they can route it off to the reviewers. I can even get involved if I want. If my operations staff wanted to review, say, an O&M manual, or maybe an air handler on the project, they can send their comments back to myself, or they could send it off to the designer here who can incorporate those comments into their final response. The key thing being here is each project participant controls what goes back to the other team. So me as the district, if I wanted to, I can control and filter everything that goes back to the contractor, or I could build rules that allows my designer to send things to me and the contractor at the same time. By connecting the entire team, we're eliminating all that redundant data entry. We're eliminating all that telephone conversation. The risk of telephone is information degrades as it gets passed from one to another. With EADOC, we don't have that issue because my contractor is reviewing exactly what the sub turned in, and they're sending that same information on. I'm capturing the highest quality information down here with my subs, and same thing with the subs over here. So my whole team is connected. The other thing about the EADOC is there's no user licensing. EADOC provides for an unlimited number of users. So it doesn't matter if the general contractor has 5 people or 25 people. If they have 5 subcontractors, or they have 200 subs. The more project participants that are on the EADOC application, the bigger the cost control and the savings are for you guys here at the districts. Now within the EADOC application, we talked about the document management side and the benefits. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a particular submittal here that's going through the review process. And so this one was created by my contractor. And if I look at the history of this particular submittal, what I'm going to see is when did the contractor create that submittal, and when did they send it to me here at the district, and then when did I actually read it. And you can see here in EADOC I've put some notes on it, and then I went ahead and passed it off to my designer and also a consultant here on the project for review. So my audit log is tracking everything that's going on in the project, and this is all done by the software. There's no user intervention required for this. This is all being done by the EADOC application. And this is a very powerful tool. If the contractor comes back and says, hey, you guys didn't respond to my submittal on a certain date and time, I can say, hey, not only do we respond, but here's when we gave you the approval code, and then here's when you read it. So when the contractor logs in and looks at this particular submittal, they're actually going to see the read by entries here in the history form. I can see the responses here in the system. So there's a very detailed audit trail automatically maintained for you guys, and it's incredibly accurate. There's no key punching, there's no spreadsheets, there's no potential for human error in terms of that audit trail. Now for me as an owner, a lot of this documentation and communication is going to go between me and my designers. My designers are going to respond back to submittals and RFIs. But for me as a project manager, I really want to keep track of issues. My focus here is cost. I really want to track anything that's going to have an impact on my budget and my financials. So what I'm doing here is tool at my disposal is called my risk items. And so as these documents and communication get routed around, if anything catches my attention, I can flag it as a risk item. Or if my architect tells me and says, hey, this RFI is going to be a cost change, I can flag that RFI here in the system because I've got access to all the records. And this risk item is internal within the district. Obviously, I don't want to share this with my contractors or designers, but this risk item is a tool for me as the project manager to track issues that could potentially have a cost or schedule impact. And so you can see here right now I've got a scheduled days and a cost amount of $60,000. I've also got a probability here of 75%. If I drill down into the risk item here, what I'll see here is over time I can revise my risk item. So this is going to become my exposure, my forecast, in terms of days, dollars, and probability here on the project. I can also link it to supporting documents and communication. So you can see there it's tied to the RFI, some submittals, a cost proposal request has been generated. Everything about this cost or this risk item is here in one place. And what I'm going to do with these risk items is I'm going to roll it up into a financial summary. So I can take a look here at all the risk for my new library project. So I can see here, here's my total exposure for my library. So these are all the issues that I'm tracking on my project that could potentially have a cost or schedule impact. And this is a very valuable tool to me because it's going to give me visibility into issues on the project. All this information that's going back and forth, the whole objective is to make sure I deliver this project on time and on budget. I want to make sure that my contractors are on schedule, they're on time, they're on budget, my designers are executing according to their contract. And so this risk tool gives me a very valuable piece of functionality to do that. Now with all these reports, I can take a look at it here at the project level. If I'm managing multiple projects, say I'm a PM or a program manager, I can take a look at everything going on here at the East River campus. Or I can take a look at my entire portfolio. And you can see here, I've only got a couple active projects, so all my numbers are all to be very similar, but I can see if I can filter it down, the dollars change. And I can even look at it here at the project or the contract level as well. So if I go to my new library project, I can go down and say, okay, give me all my risks here for my construction contractor's contract. And then I can drill down in these risk items. So I've got all these details here. I can navigate to all the supporting, the backup information behind it. I can see other issues tied to it. I can also link information to locations and specs and drawings as well, so not just the risk items. And these references are done when the forms are filled out. I've also got a powerful tool here where I can flag legitimate versus illegitimate RFIs. So if I have a contractor that's just trying to overwhelm me and my consultants with RFIs, I can very quickly track and identify which ones are real ones and which ones are fake. This way at the end of the project, if they try and hit me up for a claim with extensive RFIs, I can run and say, hey, you sent me 100 bogus RFIs, and I can go back after them for a claim. And then that history and audit trail, just like I showed you on the submittals here as well. So what we're doing is we're tying our document controls in with our risk items. So we're tying our document and our cost together because the documents are typically where those issues are going to come to the surface. It's going to be a letter from the contractor, an RFI, a drawing issue, an ASI from the designers. These are what are typically going to lead to a cost impact or schedule impact on my project. So by having all this information tracked in EADOC, I've got all my data in one place, and then I can link it to those risk and issue items. So for me as a project manager, I can tie my cost events or my issues back to those particular documents. The other thing I can do too is I can take these risk items, and they're typically going to have one of two outcomes. Either I'm going to mitigate the risk and close it out, or it's going to turn into a cost impact. And usually that cost impact is going to be in the form of a change order. And so I can link my cost proposal request or that change process to that risk item. This way, if anybody wants to go back into my project at a later date, whether it's me or somebody else, they can go back in. They can say, okay, how did we end up with this change on the project? Well, they can go back to the risk item here, number 43, and they can say, okay, this issue about underground pipe and the storm drains. Here's the issue we were tracking. Here's the dollars and costs that turned into. Here's the actual amount added. Even though my risk item was forecasting 20,000, we actually only added 5,800 to the contract. So that's the good news. I was pretty conservative with my risk item there. So I can compare, how I'm doing with my risk items and my issues to the actual expenditures. And then with EADOC's collaboration capabilities, when I prepare the CPR, I can actually send this off to my contractor. So I can tell the contractor, okay, I agree there's a change here. Tell me how much it's going to cost. And then my contractor is going to tell me, okay, Eric, here's the cost proposal. Here's the dollars and days for that particular amount of information or for that particular change in work here in the system. And so I can review and approve it. So I'm not entering their cost proposal into the application. I'm reviewing and approving their CPR. If it looks good, I'll approve it, and then I can generate my change order. And so what you'll notice is EADOC's pulling in all the information for me to review and approve. I can generate my change orders, bring in my CPR items into it, and then I can route this around for review and approval. So if I need to send the change order to my boss or my supervisor, I can do that here in the system. And then once the change order is approved, it's going to update my contractor's payment application. And this is where EADOC really sets themselves apart from the rest of the industry. I want my contractors submitting their invoices through the application. I want them putting in their quantities for the period here in EADOC. So again, for me as the owner, I'm just reviewing and approving it. I want them to bill against their base contract and against their change order items here in the payout. By controlling this information, I'm allowing the software to calculate the retention, so I don't have to go back and double check the contractor's math. I know I plug in the retention value for their contract. The software does the math for me. There's no places for the Excel spreadsheets to cause errors. I don't have to worry about getting out a calculator. The software is doing it all for me. So it's a powerful tool to reduce the amount of time I have to spend on this project just doing back office work. It's going to tell me here's the payment for the contractor, here's the schedule value line items. Now also with EADOC, these schedule value line items I can tie into my funding and budgets as well. So when the contractor submits their schedule values to me for review and approval, I can actually go into the system and I can assign each line item to its own fund and budget here in the system. This way I know when I review and approve work items, it's automatically updating my funding and budget reports. I don't have to go cost code every single cost every single month. If I'm on a 2-year project, that'd be 24 times I have to go through the pay-apps times each schedule value line item. I'm going to do it once up front with my schedule values. This way every pay estimate that comes in automatically updates my funding and budget reports. That's a huge cost savings compared to the traditional method of most people have to cost code each and every invoice that comes in. There's no need to do it. I do it up front on my contractor schedule values, and then that's going to automatically update these funding and budget reports. So when I look at my funding here for my library project, I can see the amounts, my total amounts of these funding sources, how much has been budgeted to this project. I can see how much has been allocated to contracts, and then how much has been spent from these sources on this particular project. So it's a very powerful tool to eliminate a lot of data entry. And I can't make any mistakes here in the system. Because all my reviews and approves are being done, the worst thing I can do is I can improve an incorrect pay estimate. Whatever values are in these pay apps, it's rolling up into my reports. Can I go in and make changes to my funds and budgets? Absolutely, but the system's going to log exactly what that change is. Not like an Excel spreadsheet where I have no history behind who changed what when. The EADOC application is going to track it all for you guys. When was that pay app submitted? Who's read it? Did it go to a G702 for wet signatures? Or did we do digital signatures? It's up to you guys what you need. Being in education, most of our education clients do use the AIA documents. We have the license for you guys, so we can print this to a G702, and we can do it with electronic signatures or wet signatures for you guys, depending on your requirements. We also have a license with consensus docs as well. We know some education folks starting to use those documents. So with my pay apps, my change requests, my change orders, my risk items, all my financials rolling up in here, we want to take a look at the budgets. Now the budget codes for education, as I mentioned in my PowerPoint presentation, these are going to be different for every client. If you're managing a school project for a city, if you're managing it for a state education, higher education, it's going to have different budget codes. There's a lot of different ways that school projects get managed. Everybody's building capital projects. Everybody's going to have a contract, whether you're doing design build or CM at risk. There's contractors and designers and consultants. We're all going to deliver a project. But how we report on that information is going to vary. So with the EADOC application, you guys can set up your own budget codes, your own classifications, your own groupings, your own types of codes, categories. How do you guys need to organize and report on this financial information? And it's always going to be set up so that you guys can do it at the project level here. So we'll go down to our library project. So I can take a look at my budget report for this particular project, and I can see amount of budgets, what's available from them, how much have I spent, how much have I contracted, variances, expenditures, all the different reporting things. Now as far as the columns go, you guys can actually customize these. So you guys can come in and pick and choose what columns you need in your report. You guys can create multiple reports here in the system. So I can have a series of reports, and then I can run these reports. And you can always print or export them. And this is a big thing for Educate. These budget codes are typically either dictated by the district or they're dictated by an agency that's providing the funding, either a state or a federal agency. So with the EADOC application, you can set up these codes to match the requirements. And again, once you guys set up your budgets and funds, you're not going to touch the data entry. You guys are going to review the pay applications and the change orders against these funds and budgets, and run these reports. This is also what's going to populate your dashboard reports as well. This is a project level report here on my dashboard. I can display the information numerically here, where I've got all the different costs, or I can show some gauges. Look at my exposure gauges based on risk, based on CPRs, funding gauges. Take a look at some trend charts here. How do I want the information presented? Some project teams like graphical information, some users like graphical, some like the good old text, and some prefer just a big summary report like this. Again, it depends on the audience too. Sometimes you're going to be giving presentations for boards. Sometimes it's going to be oversight committees, executives. You want the flexibility to present the information based on that audience. And the EADOC tool gives you that power. How do you want to present this information? We talked about funding sources. You can use multiple pots of money to fund a project. I can take those funding sources and I can look at them at my campus program here, or I can roll it up to a portfolio, or I could do it in my account. I can have multiple portfolios running on a single account. And you'll notice it's very easy to navigate around the software. So if I want to go back down into my education one, what I can do is I can go ahead and click and choose that particular bond or grant, or if I wanted to, I can click on any one of these other ones. So for example, maybe I'm a school modernization program. I can click on those here and it'll take me to the details of it. Or I can filter it down and I can go down into my education capital improvement portfolio. So I can look at the funding sources, I can filter it by the portfolios into my programs. So for example, some educational facilities, higher ones, have hospitals, where they have a healthcare portfolio and they have an education portfolio. You can manage them both here in EADOC. Now when we talk a lot about the information, we want to capture everything about this project. I mentioned things like the operators. What's one of the big benefits of EADOC for your operations group? And that's the ability to tie your information to major materials. So I can tie costs and I can tie everything back to my air handler. So documents, the communications, the tested reports, the O&M manuals, I can tie it all back to these assets so I can use this data after the project. EADOC is not only leveraged during the project, but I'm developing a big data set that I want to deliver to my operators. The benefits of this is going to long live past the project team. So my contractors and architects are done, then my operations group steps in. And so this way I can track the warranties, I can track shop drawings, test reports, O&M, startup and testing plans, commissioning documents, all against these major assets using these material tags. So this information that's being captured and being generated by the contractors and designers is going to benefit my operations group because I can turn over tagged information to those operators. And it's going to help them better manage my facilities once the construction is complete. And we're tracking everything about these projects. Your inspections, all the quality control. It's a huge database of everything that goes on during the project. And it's very well organized. It's very well structured. Drop-down menus, lookups, relationships to make it easy for the necessary participants to find what they need on the project. I could bring my operators in during construction and have them review submittals. I may want them to take a look at O&M manuals, take a look at testing procedures, commissioning procedures, and give them access to the system so they're involved. And keep in mind with EADOC, the tabs, the terminology, the acronyms, the forms, we're going to configure these based on your requirements. Each client we work with has their own unique requirements, their own procedures that they have to follow, and so we're going to work with you guys to set those up. And we want to track everything, not just your inspections and RFIs and submittals, but all the communication. It could be a memo or a letter that causes an issue later on down the road. That's going to be tracked here in the EADOC application. This way, everything about this project's in one place, and it's all got a consistent audit trail. Again, these read-by entries are huge. We've got a lot of clients that come back to us and say, hey, these audit trails are preventing claims left and right for us. Because they can go back to the contractor and say, hey, no, we did send this back to you, and here's where you read it, here's when you did X, Y, Z with it. It's all here for you guys. And you got your daily reports and meetings and calendars and tasks and webcams here in the system as well. Down here in the document section, you got the drawings and the specifications, schedules, pictures. So you can browse through the pictures here in the system. This is another great tool. You know, a lot of projects are generating large volumes of pictures. You want to be able to search those pictures. Date ranges, keywords, notes that went in. You can do that here in the picture tool. I can click on the photos and see the full-size version of it. The other thing I want to talk about is schedules is with EADOC, you can bring them in from P6 or MS Project. So you can bring up your Gantt charts here in the system. So what you can do, this is just a simple little schedule I've got from MS Project. If I can drill down to my schedule, my WBS is here. I can take a look at the different activities within it. And I can show things like critical path. I can have it show the baseline to go with it. It's up to you guys. And so you can control the user interface. Again, the scheduling is being done in P6 or MS Project. But we're giving you a nice, easy to use UI to view that schedule and take a look at how the projects and programs are performing. The reporting here in the EADOC application. So I talked about collaboration. One of the key things to EADOC where we provide true collaboration is the ability to display only the results that the user has access to. So this particular RFI here, number 6, because the contractor hasn't sent it to me yet, I don't have access to the contents. That's why it says not shared. For the RFIs I do have access to, I can drill down into them. It takes me directly to it. So these reports are ensuring that each user only sees the data that's specific for that user. We're using the workflow to control that access. And this is unique to EADOC. There is no other software application on the market that provides this functionality where everybody can build reports, everybody can run reports, everybody can use the system. It's full features and functionality for everybody, but it's only to their set of data. And you'll see here with our reporting tool, I can go ahead and customize my reports. This is a reporting tool that was built for people managing capital projects. It's checkboxes. You know, if I want to, I could add submittals to my report here. I can pick and choose the status of my reports, pick and choose the filter criteria, and then the columns. So it's really easy to use. To come in here, change the columns around. I can even relabel the fields, customize my column widths. You know, I don't have to be a software programmer or an IT expert to do that here in the system. So I can do that here in the EADOC application. Hit copy instead of edit, so we'll give it a new name. Let's see, do we want to add another column here? Bring this up. There we go. Go ahead and save my report, run the report. And then I can see RFIs and submittals in the same report. And I can even drill down into the submittal. So again, very easy to use, very powerful tool, and everybody can use it. The contractors, the designers, we're reducing costs for everybody on these projects. And that rolls up into substantial savings for me as an owner. In the Profile tab, this is administration. This is where I can add users, organizations, and projects to the system. So, the other thing I want to show you guys too is our relationship reporting. So I talked about claims defense. So using those links and relationships, I can run this report. You know, as a large project generates a lot of data, the relationships are going to become critical for you guys. You know, if my boss comes back to me and says, Eric, why are we spending this $1 million on this change order and it happened a year ago, I'm going to need to do some research. And one of the first things I'm going to do is bring up that change order and say, okay, how did we get to this change order? Well, I can see I had a risk item about some exterior siding changes. That risk item was tied back to RFIs and submittals and another issue and some specs and drawings. Here's all that backup documentation that I'm going to need to review. Now, if I'm not using EADOC and I'm using a folder structure, I don't have these relationships. I'm going to have to go back through and read every single RFI. I'm going to have to go back through and read every single submittal. With EADOC, I don't. I know here's the documentation that was tied back to that particular change. This isn't just good for me organizational-wise and be able to tell my boss, but if we get into a claim situation, this is a very powerful tool to help defend us against that claim. Because now I can show here's how we got to that change order, here's the process we took, and also by linking this RFI to the change process, I can ensure my contractor doesn't come back to me at the end of the project. Because if he files another claim for this same RFI, I've got the records to prove he's double dipping. And that's a huge risk for that contractor. Because that's in most states, that's a big no-no, double claims. And then that can send them to jail in some places. but I need these records. I need the detail to do that. If I don't have these audit trails, if I don't have these relationships, I don't have the tools to defend myself and my organization against those contractors. With EADOC, we provide that tool for you guys, and we make it easy to use. The other thing too is we give the users the ability to customize the information, reports, dashboards. How do you want to see the information? Project level, program level, portfolio level. What components do I want to see on my dashboard? Everybody likes to look at information differently. So final thing here, we're going to talk about some of the different dashboards here for you guys. I'm going to look up a program one here. Some people like lots of information. Some people like lots of dashboards. It's up to you guys. We're providing all the data here for you guys to consume. Dashboards, reports, emails, notifications. It's up to you guys how you want to process that information. And we do it in a collaborative fashion. I want my contractors and consultants and designers submitting their expense to me through the system, so I'm reviewing and approving and not wasting my keyboard entry. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and unmute the audience here and wrap up my presentation here for you guys and open up to questions for you.
The conference has been unmuted.
There you go. So feel free to go ahead and fire away with any questions on the presentation here today, and I'll go ahead and answer those for you. So if nobody asks questions, I will go ahead and pick somebody off the list. Let's go ahead and start with Jay. Jay Poston, do you have any questions for us?
No, not really.
No?
How do I get my company to buy your product? I've been trying to get them to do it for years, but they don't seem to be interested. They're looking at other packages.
They're looking at other ones. What are you guys currently using?
We have one that it's an in-house program that we had written specifically for our uses years ago, before the advent of software specifically for construction management firms. And it's basically a spreadsheet-based database. A spreadsheet's connected to a database system that only tracks financial things, change orders, pay apps, things like that. Does not incorporate RFI. Well, no, it does do RFIs, but no submittals, no anything. And I'm just looking here at the dashboard. I report that monthly to our client, almost in that same format with the red, green risk, the exposure, all of that. Yep, budget.
So for you being on the consulting side that's working with agencies, the trick will be to find one of those clients that is a little more progressive and wants to try a new tool. And the client needs to be engaged, obviously. Some clients just turn everything over to you guys and say, hey, you're the consultant, just give me a monthly report. If you have a client that's a little more interactive, a little more engaged on their projects, show them this and say, hey, would you guys be interested in purchasing this on a project? 90% of the time they'll sign up and say, great, let's take it for a run. This way you guys can use it on a project, and then you can show the rest of your team that says, hey, this is way better in terms of our in-house tool. Here's the client that requested it, and here's why it's so successful. We've done that with quite a few other firms where their response has been, hey, we built our own tool, we're going to use it. They go out and test EADOC on another project, and they're like, okay, we're done with our homegrown tool.
Well, we're done with our homegrown tool. We're in the market for one. I don't know why. EADOC is not something that they've considered because it seems to be tailor-made for what we do.
Yeah. Most of our clients are either facility owners or owners' representatives.
Yeah, we're owners rep. That's what we are.
Yep, that is our client base. We have a few general contractors, but 95% of our clients are owners or owners reps. So, after this presentation, I'll pop up my contact info for you. Give me a shout, and you and I can talk some more about how we can get involved with that evaluation for you.
Okay.
Dylan or Nellie?
Yes.
Any questions from you guys? Feedback?
No, it's fine.
All right.
If you can, you're going to send us your contact number, right?
Yep. Yeah, I will follow up. In fact, here I'll bring up the last slide. And we'll send out an email with our contact information as well. Let's go to the last slide. So we'll be posting the webinar on our website for you guys as well. So if you want to share it with colleagues or anything, we'll send out a link to that after the end of the webinar. We'll send out our contact information for you guys so you can reach out to us and we can talk some more about particular needs for you guys and get involved with evaluations or if you got any more questions for us. At the end of the webinar, there's also a short survey. If you guys have any feedback for us, let us know thoughts, topics for other webinars. That would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you guys for your time today.
Thank you.